Well, I'm sure that you will all remember that 2 years ago we were barely just getting out from our homes and from a hard lockdown. A really hard lockdown that hit all sectors of economy and especially the tourism ecosystem. But that has also represented a unique opportunity for all of us to slow down, to rethink the tourism model and try to reorient a bit its activities towards sustainability. And for this, many initiatives also have appeared during this period to support a new tourism model. So it is now, 2 years after that, that we can pretty much talk about tourism recovery. I mean, I know that many of you had some troubles, some trouble to find a room, a hotel room, an available room in Barcelona because these days are crazy. So now that this recovery is clearly in sight, some questions arise as well. For instance, can we say that we have really learned from the pandemic? Have some of these traditional processes really changed? Or has the transition towards sustainability speed up? And a very important question, if there are changes, which of these changes will remain over the next years, no? So, well, in this panel, we will try to stick to the idea of this recovery process that we need to promote so that our tourism models become really more resilient, more sustainable, and a more socially equitable, and of course that can remain over the years. So we will start with the traditional round of presentations, and then we'll try to generate this debate and answer some of these questions. So for start, I would like to thank Jeremy Sampson very much to be here with us, although online because he's connecting from the United States. Correct me if I'm wrong. So Jeremy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. I wish I was there with you in Barcelona, but yeah, I'm connecting from the United States. It just came up in my memories the other day, a photo of the last time we had this event in Barcelona, and I was really missing all my friends and contacts there. So I hope you're all having a really nice conference. And my voice is has been a little bit. I was sick in the last couple of weeks, so if you don't understand me super well, I'm sorry. I'm trying my my best to make sure you can understand. So I'm here to talk about the COVID recovery and where we are in the process of that recovery and the big conversation that everyone has been having about the tourism sector. And it's not only here in the Med, it's been everywhere, even from the very first day. It seems.
Sorry, Jeremy, we lost you for a moment, but I don't know if he's able to hear us. We can wait for some seconds, or no, we pass to the next speaker. So please, Arnau, yeah, okay. If you want to take the floor, I think we won't have any problems with this connection.
Is it working now?
Yeah, they have your presentation. Just a second.
Hello. Is it working?
Well, yeah. You can start if you want. Yeah, I'll show it now.
Great, thank you. So my name is Arnau. I'm coming from the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. Probably, if you don't know, it's a union of state entities and NGOs focused on nature conservation. We are based in the Center for Mediterranean Cooperation in Malaga, in southern Spain. And I'm here on behalf of IUCN, but I'm also proudly representing one of the community projects, Destimed Plus, that we have here, some of our partners from CPMR and from South Aegean region in Greece. I'm also here on behalf of the MID Network, that it's a spin-off of several projects that we have been working on. These projects are mainly focused on protected areas and ecotourism development in the Mediterranean. So today I will try to reflect a bit on some key thoughts, let's say, coming out of the COVID rather than on COVID itself. on protected areas and also on how biodiversity and nature can be part of the solution, let's say, in this process. So to start with, just a couple of quick thoughts. I think most of the people is already grounded in this topic. We all know that there was a trend to more people visiting natural areas before COVID. COVID exacerbated that across the Mediterranean. There have been some uneven impacts, as you know. Overcrowding has been probably something happening everywhere, but in many places with livelihoods depending on international travel, they suffered quite a lot, especially in the southern Mediterranean. Another thing that came up a bit through this process was this concept of One Health, that the health of communities, the health of the planet are very connected, and that the resilience is needed at the community level, and also nature needs to be healthy in order to protect us, also to visit it. We know that now some countries are prescribing visits to parks as part of process for mental health, for physical health. So I think it's a very important topic, and also coming the 30 by 30 agenda, to have more of our lands and seas protected by 2030. But stepping a bit back and just not thinking on protected areas and natural areas, but thinking as biodiversity as a whole, I think I put this quite cheesy meme, but as a kind of a reminder of what people were saying at the end of COVID, about how there is a kind of a folding events that have different impacts, and all of them need to be addressed. So we cannot only address climate change, we cannot only recover from COVID, we can only address biodiversity collapse, but we need to understand the interlinks and the nexuses between these different issues and try to find solutions that work. In that sort of solutions, I will now kind of present a couple of things, but also I want to also bring on this topic that was discussed about climate change, about it's kind of like top-down, bottom-up, and everything needs in a way to start working together, because probably there is no magic solutions, and all of them are extremely context-dependent, especially in tourism. It's a very place-based activity. And finally, connecting this link, this nexus between economic recovery, climate change, and biodiversity, just to make sure that there is understanding of the co-benefits of actions that have in the others. So if we protect better biodiversity, we reduce impacts of climate change. And for that, a very good tool that probably some of you know are nature-based solutions. That is an approach on how to use ecosystem-based approaches and actions to improve biodiversity to address societal challenges. In the case of tourism, these type of approaches are especially good at thinking how, for example, businesses and destination stakeholders can take ownerships of their natural assets. And for example, through projects of restoration, they can achieve better protection from sea level rise, from extreme weather events, also can offset some of their emissions. They can, by improving carbon capture, and also they can provide better places for their communities and for visitors to go. There is a recent report on that I think you can find from Regenerative Tourism that they have published. I think it's very interesting, how they are bringing this concept into the tourism sector. And also thinking on solutions, like going back a bit in the beginning, not talking about natural areas, protected areas. This MID network, this spin-off coming from these projects, that we have been working in several, I think nearly 40 protected areas around the Mediterranean, with the idea to bring together, especially park managers and local operators, to create meaningful tourism experiences in their protected areas that generate both benefits to conservation and local communities. At this moment, we're trying to see how this, in a way, connects with this willingness of new experiences, and how we can communicate that in the marketplace, and also to other stakeholders that can take up this model. So through that, we have been, as I was mentioning, trying to connect parks and private tourism businesses. And a recent small win, like in the middle of COVID, obviously it's very difficult to achieve success in the marketplace, but we managed to secure a partnership with Intrepid Travel. It's a large small group tours outbound operator, and they recently included a small experience in Kornati National Park in Croatia. And I like the fact that tourists that went there in this kind of adventure trip, no, like managed to single out, no, that the experience they had in the protected area was probably the most meaningful one they managed to have in that place. So we think this is the type of travel in a way that we can, seek and look forward. And I had some more slides, but I think I would just give some space to the others. Maybe we can go back to it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Arnau. I think that, no, we will try to connect with Jeremy later. So if you want, Damia, to share with us some insights of your experience with this topic.
Okay. First of all, I would like to say thank you to the invitation. I'm really happy to be here today, sharing with you. But not as, I'm not going to talk about the Observatory of Islands, of Economy, I guess. But I don't have presentation anyway, so it's okay.
No. We don't have any presentation here.
All right. What I want to share is that I'm here not as an expert. I think I'm like many of you, like a open eyes and open mind learner of what has been happening in the last years, and with you learning about what's next. So when I'm facing the title of this roundtable is very challenging, and what I want is to collect a little bit 5 points that maybe would be interesting to share, to open later the questions and the debate in the roundtable. The first aspect for me is the tempo. One of the lessons that we are learning from this COVID is that right now we're finding in 2 different speeds: short-term speed, long-term speed and needs. Both important to start right now. Short-term, the emergency aids to our companies. Long-term, all these aspects that probably most of you are talking during these days here, which is also very important starting from this point, which means talking about the pathway, European pathway for tourism, talking about the climate action plans. All these aspects are really important starting from now, but sharing the same time the worries of all this sector that it's there trying to survive. So the first thing is the lesson of how we will deal with the tempo. The second aspect, the second point I really would like to share is what I call the willingness to travel. Your dream travel is now. This is the sensation that right now we are having, the one that we're working in marketing and promoting our destinations around the world. All the indicators right now are measuring the need and the willingness to travel are very high. Just to give you a few examples. 88% of seats that were promoted in 2019 are right now on the table. So we are only 12% down the number of air company seats facing Catalonia, facing, in this case, majority Barcelona. The average of booking activity per day during this May until yesterday, every day of this May is higher than the average booking rate of pre-pandemic period. And right now in Catalonia we have 260% more searchings for Catalonia tourism activity, including Barcelona, than just 3 years ago. So the willingness of travel and that aspect that my trip dream is now, no waiting for anymore, regardless the cost of life, regardless the war, and regardless the own terms of security and COVID aspect that's been influenced us. Right now, it's difficult to identify in our market. So that, for me, is the second key point, the second bullet. Third one is what we call the pendulum effect. It's like, if you ask, probably you will ask later, if we have changed something in our models, it's so difficult right now to identify if what level of change we are having after all these learnings that the COVID has given us. And here we are talking about regenerative tourism, and we'll talk about sustainability, and we will talk about resilience, and we will talk about the new barriers that has appeared during the pandemic, the workstations, the solo travelers. We can talk a little bit about this if you want, but it's very difficult right now to identify how is that change, how large is the change that the tourism activity needs. Probably we will elaborate a bit later, but right now this is the effect of pendulum. No? We are far away in what probably we had to be, and probably the following months in destinations of mass tourism as where we are. We will have tourism, whole over tourism activities, etc. Let's see in what point of the balance we are. And finally, the two last points that I think as a good learner could share with you is the concept that has been classified as the Great Resignation, something that we were not just under the pandemic period, because most of the things you could say, well, the pandemic and the COVID has been accelerating the things that we already were discussing before. Sustainability is a good example. Climate change is a good example. But the lack of well-qualified workers in our sector is something that we were not thinking just 3 years ago. Now is a reality. 23% down of people is thinking that has been abandoned our sector. And here we have also to focus something that probably before we were not putting enough interest, enough passion, enough attention, which is the workers' conditions, starting with the salaries, but also with the reputation of our job places. So something that is for me very important. And finally, and something that maybe is very close to what I'm doing my day by day, which is marketing and communication, is the responsibility. Who is responsible here when we talk about tourism? So I think we have a very important role play to connect the ones that work in marketing with many of you who are working in tourism management of destinations. I've heard a lot of conversations among of us saying, now it's not time for marketing, now it's time for management of the destination. I think we are very wrong. The main point here is just management of the destination, which is important. We need to translate all these strong decisions that we're taking right now from this table, from this community, beyond, because these decisions has to be translated to the clients, has to be translated to the tourists. We have to understand well the mindset of tourism and to share the responsibility between marketing and management. So I think it was 5 points that I just would like to share with you also as a learner, learning these lessons about COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Damia. Of course, we will discuss about some of these ideas later on. Can we connect with Jeremy right now? Is he ready?
I'm ready.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Hi. Hello again.
Hi. Sorry about that.
Don't worry.
Okay, so just to jump right in, thank you very much to the other panelists for their perspectives. I agree with many of the things that have already been said. I think it's very important to work nationally with the travel and tourism. And it would mean very in many places. In fact, while Mediterranean, so many places really, and so many businesses and nations struggled. National parks, for example, here in the U.S., where visitation doubled and tripled, and challenges really put a whole lot of pressure on local communities that exacerbated the challenges that were occurring even before. But I think that COVID recovery is only one small piece of the discussion here. In fact, I do a keynote presentation.
No, we lost you again, Jeremy. I'm so sorry. These things happen, but yeah, it's a pity that they're happening right now. We jump into Giovanni, of course. Hello, Giovanni Ruggeri. He's
hello.
He's connecting with from Palermo, I guess.
Yes.
So the floor is yours, Giovanni. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation, and a big hug to all the people that are following us in presence, in person in Barcelona. We study tourism economy, and of course islands. I'm based in Palermo, in Sicily, in the island, big island. So I can tell you what's happened or what is changed in islands with after COVID-19. So the question is, the lesson of COVID-19, but what we learned from COVID-19. Of course, time changed the concept. Technology, I'm here, not there. This is a new possibility to reach you, to be in hybrid situation conference. This is a new. And then the third word is tourism, of change. Well, I think, like psychologists tell us that to change habits, you need time. So we had 2 years time to change habits. So something happens in consumers' behaviors. We know we change idea. In which directions in terms of demand, tourism demand? Well, we have 3 reactions after COVID-19, you know. First, reduced travel. So not more confident of travel, some part of people. Another part of the market decide to increase travel because they postpone the travel in now. So we have this big boom now after a total stop of tourism. The third reaction is a change way of travel. This is very interesting change because changing habits, changing people, changing way. So what we observed from the observatory of tourism for islands economy, there is a change of paradigm, okay? A total change of paradigm. What is change? This is the questions. What is change, really change? It's like a Copernican change model. So before the islands, we have the drive of change was the demand, okay? So we were looking at the demand, trying to get it, and the demand, tourism demand increased step by step, you know? So we look at tourism arrivals, overnights, increase, and islands and other places follow the demand, okay? Trying to adapt tourism supply. So increase bed capacity, increase services. After COVID-19, in islands, we are more consciousness about the supply. So it's a change of directions of what we see. So supply, it's important. We have to keep it, and we can think about the model, the hospitality model, the how to host people. So we look at the economic growth, yes, but a little more on environmental and social. Because we think a place, tourist place without local people. We speak about territories, places, destinations, not people based on the place, on the destination. So the paradigm, the change paradigm is from demand drive to supply drive, little by little. So what does it mean? That we don't have to follow the demand, but we have too little to think the demand, what we can offer, what we can organize, in which way we can organize the offer. Okay, so the basic concept we look at the islands are based on nature-based, not COVID-19, more attention to the nature, sustainability. It means place, not crowd of people, not, you know, not tourist, not more touristic places. So maybe we have to change the word tourism, no? We can adopt tourism travels, maybe temporary people, temporary residents. We can think about the words. We need to change the words to describe tourism after COVID-19. So the new words, it's more relational. You know, it means authenticity, of course. It means people. And that's why islands are very interesting, because they network people, and you feel to be in your house, in your home, in your place, if you stay in an island, in some islands. So OTA tried to cooperate with a lot of organizations for islands development. But why islands? Why islands? Because they are fragile territories, and they don't have a lot of options of development. They have tourism is the big industry, the main sectors. So they cannot move to the other sectors. So we have only one direction of development. So what does it mean supply side, supply drive in the development process? It means that we look at a change from the idea of a big destinations to small one based on local people, local entrepreneurship, organizing itself, avoiding in this way over tourism challenges. So what can we say at the end? Before COVID-19, with also my colleague Nicola Camatti, that maybe is there at the moment from Venice University.
He's here, yes.
Yes, hello Nicola. Well, we started a model to reduce over tourism in 2019. Then maybe at the end of the project, the tourism stopped, everywhere. But anyway, we decided after this model with Valencia, Venice, and other places to reduce, to stop promotions, to reduce, because before COVID-19, the over-tourism goes to the destination, the very well-known destinations. So the trend of people is that they choose the very well-known places, and more. So the diffusion in a place is very difficult to obtain or in time, in a 1 year time. So what we have to follow, what we learn is just abandon the concept of destination, of big destinations, of the concept that is very well known. Moving to the supply side drive, so concept, trying to involve people, local people. Okay, so islands, Mediterranean, nautical. So they increase the motivations, not land motivation, but from people, because now the people need more. They brings and ask more, and try to specify better this very empty word that is sustainability, to apply properly in the islands first. And in this way, people, relational people, and the authenticity should be, the must of the future local development. So industrial tourism approach, industry, or community-based tourism approach. These are two different and opposite directions. We work as OTA. We did a lot of research, papers, European projects, summer schools, just to work on training on the new era of tourism. This is more relational, based on people, based on networks of people, not based on big manager of destination manager. That is industrial tourism model. We have to follow Miami model, Cancun model, or a little islands in Greece or some in Italy and other parts model. maybe, after COVID-19, we will look at a different way of travel and stay with people, not, stay in a big industry. All models could cooperate together, of course, but we have more push, local people to be consciousness that, tourist is not a consumer, but could be a friend and could be a residence, and is a residence because he pays taxes, local taxes, so should be a local resident. So this could be a more, way to avoid the disasters that increase of tourism in some places is going to do that. At the end of this presentation, I can say that the word that I would like to share with you is plan. Because unplanned tourism is a disaster. And we don't generally plan tourism. We only plan in Europe marketing and promotion. And this is very wrong approach if we want to a long-term development based on people and looking at social impact and environmental. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. Thanks. So, hi, Jeremy. Let's try this again.
We're going to try one more time. Okay.
Sure.
I think the first lesson from COVID recovery is that technology is not always my friend. But it's something that we are certainly trying to deal with. So back to my point, I believe actually that we are in a time of major societal transformation. And I think it's really important to understand the context that we are sitting in, because it's much broader, of course, than COVID. And I believe that there are two key drivers that will inform and affect everything that we're doing going forward. Those two drivers being, of course, the climate emergency, and secondly, the global call for and discussion around diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly when it comes to inclusion of communities and the inequity that exists in our economies. And unfortunately, travel and tourism has not always been a leader in either of these two areas. In fact, I believe that these two key drivers pose a significant threat to travel and tourism and could be leveraged into an opportunity. But thus far, I think there is still a big discussion about whether the industry will have the capability of actually transforming in response to these big societal shifts that are occurring. I don't know if this term is familiar in the Mediterranean, but in the US, there's a concept called the social license to operate. And there's been a big discussion lately about whether travel and tourism is indeed at risk of losing the social license to operate. And I think these two areas, climate, where not only has the industry's response been slow, but there is a broad discussion about whether it's actually responsible to travel anymore. And the industry's lack of response in many ways to the conversation about diversity, to the thinking around whether tourism actually brings genuine benefits to communities, or whether the wealth is, like many parts of the economy, is concentrated at the top. And this is a moment for the industry to reflect and indeed understand whether it has the will and the method to adapt to this transformative moment. If you can change the slide, please. Some of my fellow panelists have shared a little bit about this already, but I think it's important to note that in the last couple of years, and I think accelerated by COVID, we're seeing all sorts of change and all sorts of indicators that the future will look different. I put here 5 key areas. I normally have 5 slides, but we don't have the time to go into this, but I think it's important to see the pressure coming from everywhere. Investors are changing in terms of what they expect from companies. And those expectations have accelerated fairly dramatically when it comes to issues of sustainability and particularly climate change. Consumers are changing, travelers are changing, and particularly the young generation, Generation Z, where the expectations are dramatically different in terms of what they expect from the companies that they support in terms of not only product and experience, but values and the impact that those companies or places are actually having on the world. Employees, increasingly the workforce, is showing us that they are prepared for revolution, and the industry has not always had the best relationship with its workforce. I think it's quite interesting that nowadays young people all over the world are saying they are uninterested in working in travel and tourism. 30 years ago, this was a much different story. And there was a lot of interest in working in this industry, a lot of enthusiasm and excitement. And I fear those indicators are not a positive one. Residents, of course, all over the world are increasingly angry, frustrated, saying they will no longer put up with business as usual. And they're organizing to react to this moment. And we're seeing the beginnings of real, genuine policy response. I think the European Union actually leading the way here with new frameworks around the transformative pathways, and particularly a mandate for changing what success looks like. And if you can go to the next slide, please. I think this is the first and most important response that travel and tourism will need to build into a foundation of transformation, and that is rethinking what success looks like. For a long time, there's been a significant reporting around the economic benefit of tourism, the jobs that it creates, the revenue and money that it brings into communities. But that conversation has been incomplete, unfortunately, missing some of the data and the accountability around impact. And even on the positive side, lacking a bit of nuance around who those benefits are actually reaching. The Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action and Tourism, which I know you've heard about from my colleague yesterday, as well as the Future of Tourism Coalition, which my organization, the Travel Foundation, started with 6 other nonprofit organizations. Both of these initiatives were designed to bring people together in a way that would help collectively to redefine success, to make sure that climate change and the response, the transformation that's required to react to climate is a part of our collective thinking going forward, built in, not a separate thing that everyone must tick off, but rather an integrated approach to thinking about how we go forward. And the Future of Tourism Coalition, with 13 guiding principles that attempt to define what better means in Build Back Better, and putting communities and the environment at the heart of decision. Final slide, please. I just want to highlight what we have identified as 3 critical management trends, particularly for destinations, but actually it applies to travel and tourism at large. If we are able to successfully change what success looks like, there are 3 pieces of the enabling environment that will help ensure that travel and tourism is on a path to real transformation. The first one is to ensure that these new measures of success or new key performance indicators are genuinely built in. Unless the people working in travel and tourism, in destinations and in companies, have different ways to measure, genuinely to measure success that help to achieve balance, there will be no transformation. Secondly, increasingly, DMOs, other regional organizations who work in tourism are finding that they have a wider mandate. Travel and tourism is now being seen increasingly as a key driver of the economy, and this has not always been clear. Many communities are asking themselves, why do we want tourism? And what is it that tourism can help us to accomplish? But if we think that way, we also understand how tourism can be a means to an end, a means for achieving quality of life, for conservation. And the more that conversation happens, the more likely it is that tourism will not be on its own, but rather will be part of a larger mandate for placemaking and planning. And finally, these trends and these challenges, particularly climate change, are not any individual or any individual organization's responsibility. Oftentimes there's paralysis because organizations or individuals don't quite understand what it is that they can do. But there is a need for real collective action. The climate emergency can be the moment that actually brings together public and private sector, public sector agencies, organizations all working together under a broad challenge to really not only respond to and collectively own the problem, but to think how is it through investment and innovation working together that we can provide meaningful solutions. If public and private sector do not work together on this issue, I'm afraid that transformation will never occur. So I believe these are the three most important foundational trends for us to keep in mind as we go forward in the COVID recovery and really in the global recovery, because this is the moment where change will either need to occur or we will, I'm afraid, continue down the wrong path. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks. Yeah, indeed. So, finishing now with this idea of the public-private innovation, I wanted to ask Arnau, and the rest of you can answer later if you want, of course. The YUCN is involved in many projects focused on tourism and ecotourism, coordinating also with many stakeholders and many organizations. So if there is a lesson learned from this pandemic is that we need to collaborate and cooperate among us. So what would be your insights?
So basically here, I think I have two thoughts. One would be more at the work we do in protected area level. So trying to see how, as I mentioned, public actors like parks and private business can collaborate in a way that the timings that Damia was mentioning can work. So obviously each one needs to go a bit out of their comfort zone and do things that maybe they are not meant to do. And the timings usually are frustrating in both sides about the expectations and when the results are going to come, and especially like the commercial side. So any private actor at the end needs to be reflected in the marketplace. And I think that the challenge that we're having, the lesson in general that we have found is that local businesses, SMEs, they have a willingness to care for the destination, and that's kind of an important drive to keep them in the fold. And in general, I think public actors in general need to kind of try again, to go out of the comfort zone and try to understand these timings and the way a private actor works. And I want to also reflect a bit more in the larger picture, talking about like climate and talking about nature-based solutions, large investments. I think the public sector needs to be seen as this small cog that starts to make things turn, and there needs to be bold investments. Obviously, some large accommodation groups or businesses in tourism can make large investments in some destinations to improve, their climate adaptation in some key assets. But if we are to think about how small businesses can integrate these processes, or I think the public sector needs to be there supporting them and taking the destination. So that's kind of my two thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other thoughts about Jeremy? Yes,
please. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think it starts with identifying what the common goals are, objectives. We recently did a project with a very large tour operator at the Travel Corporation and a big national tourism organization Visit Scotland around climate change, and it was really inspiring because when you look at their individual climate action targets, their individual responsibility, you could draw a circle around their specific accountability. But all of a sudden, by bringing just those two entities together and recognizing that there's a shared responsibility for infrastructure, for suppliers, for travelers, in terms of how they would be communicated with, et cetera, it changed the game. It changed the moment where we thought, okay, by identifying some goals that we share, perhaps there's much more that can be accomplished. A couple of really critical things came out of this: an opportunity to work together on advocating for more sustainable infrastructure, and another thinking from a marketing perspective about how to bring new products to the market that were zero emissions. And all of a sudden, they start to identify that there are other parts of the ecosystem that can be brought in because they shared the same goal. But unless they come to the table and identify from the beginning what is the shared opportunity, then the conversation never occurs. So I think there's a real starting point of saying, what is it that we can look at collectively, and how does that help us think differently about where we might spend our time and resources in order to have a genuine impact.
Thank you. One of the other questions that you talk about is that the demand is becoming responsible, maybe, or well, we are of course seeing a change of behavior due to different consequences, but the tourists are changing the way they travel and what kind of tourist services they consume. So from your point of view, as director for the marketing director for the Catalan Tourist Board, have you perceived this change? Is the tourism more responsible really, or is the demand asking for this kind of regenerative tourism activities?
I don't know. I mean, again, it's time. We're coming out from a very shocking thing to all of us, and to make a clear affirmation how it's changing, we only have what we could say green shoots, green sprouts, brotes verdes in some sense. No, we can identify little things that we still don't know if that will be continuous in the time. One of probably these green shoots, the most important one for me, is what Jeremy was saying, which is the individual responsibility about when we travel. I think we start to identify that there is a new commodities that the demand is asking to the destinations and to the tourism sector. Is a clear demand about green stays, very clear demand. I'm not talking now about greenwashing, about green stays. The compromise that those services were working in to identify the neutral footprint, that they could give us a proposal about the compensation of the gas emissions. That I think is something that is there from the demand, so is appearing. Also, with the changing of different generations, now we're in the Z generation, that is very well identified that our children about all these aspects are much more conscious than the older generations. That could be contribute to this idea. New commodities, green stays. Actually, we can see OTAs that are promoting the position of many of our accommodations companies in the ranking positions because they are trying to develop sustainability actions plans. So it's a clear need, and it's well proof that we are experimenting with one of the new projects from Nextur, that it's clear that the performance of companies that are working and selling the services with the sustainability level behind are better and more competitive. It's a reality that I think is one of the green shots. The other aspect that I think it's clear that Dr. Ruggieri was also mentioned before, and I think it's clear, is the way of travel. But now it's very confusing. We have a lot of dust on the goal, so we have to clean up the dust. But it seems that the way of travel will be changing, but now it's mixing the micro travel with the tendency, a very clear tendency, micro traveling, something that we don't want, but it's there, it's clear, because the need to travel, the willings. At the same time, the travel of your life, or trying to compose new programs where it's longer term, longer stay, which is what we're looking for, and most importantly, try to introduce the mobility to the destination in part of the experience. It's something that is now probably talking about a lot about train, and how to include also the transport in the idea of the experience of travel. I think something that's another green shot. And finally, new contents. For marketing agencies, what we are finding is the tourism after COVID is not just asking now what we've been working, especially the last month, which is the reencounter. Like, come again. We are very welcome to us. We are safe. No, this is the messages that we've been giving to the people. Now it's time to connect with the planning. Just it's time to work on the messages about conscious tourism, about tourism and regeneration. We need to achieve again to connect this because the demand is asking for the value in the contents from the marketing departments we are making to promote our destinations to the world. And that's it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, sure. While you were talking, I was thinking about, okay, so let's try not to go back where we were, but well, we are facing really important challenges right now, and everything is changing so fast. And now that everything's open, but how could, for instance, an economic recession affect to these recent initiatives, such as the Future of Tourism Coalition, or these indicators of change that we are already seeing, the change of behavior of the demand? How could an economic recession affect to these changes and make us go back to where we were before? And more importantly, what could we do to avoid it? Who dares? Giovanni? We don't hear you, sorry. Maybe you're muted or, yeah.
Okay, sorry. We hope to skip the recession, of course. We hope not to be involved in a second stop or second, inflation and some economic overview that we expect. So we hope to be more resilient to this future. You're asking us if these new changes, this new macroeconomic factors worldwide will affect tourism again. Well, tourism is very resilient, and we know this, and the travel needs, it's very, it's one big part of our behavior, our way of life. So how to avoid this? How to avoid it? Only with our European policy, tourism policy, of course. This is a very an imperative, and also the energy transaction. We have to work on it more, because it's something about connected with the transport. If we speak about energy or sustainability, first step is transport. That is the basic, of the first step of tourism is transport, air transport, how to move. And so, yes, European policies, national policies based on tourism should be adopted in the next future. We need it as a support to maintain these external economies that we have to keep in Europe and already worldwide.
Thank you. Any other opinions with these regards? Or any other aspect that you wanted to highlight, maybe? If not, we can see, I don't know, we were a little bit late before, so maybe we have some questions from the audience. Okay, so if we show them in the screen, okay. So to Jeremy, which ones do you think that are the most important new KPIs with the private and public sectors? And are they the same or both? We don't hear you either. Maybe you're muted.
Yes, I was. I didn't disappear this time. Yeah, I think that ultimately the critical way we need to look at this is that tourism does not exist in a vacuum. So therefore, actually the starting point is to look at the indicators which are driving towards other outcomes ultimately. So how is tourism ultimately helping to be a catalyst for response to climate change, to adaptation? How is tourism contributing or not to quality of life for local people? How is the tourism sector actually bringing about change in an equitable manner for places that are striving for inclusivity and and equity? And so these are the important questions, and it's so important that we actually look at, well, what are the causal indicators that are preventing tourism from, or in some cases, helping tourism to achieve its important role as part of a broader ecosystem. So I think that's from a place perspective, it's so important that tourism have its clear its role and its contribution in achieving these broader sensibilities. And when it comes to the actual performance of the tourism sector, we simply need to ensure that the indicators are demonstrating balance, and I don't believe that they are standardized necessarily. I think that balance is different depending on where you are, and the trade-offs may be in a city may actually be that there are environmental impacts that ultimately, or sort of impacts around crowding or those sorts of things that are preventing quality of life from occurring. In a small rural area that is using tourism as a tool for economic development, may find that they will decide on other trade-offs. But ultimately, if we don't have a balanced set of indicators and we don't look at the costs of sort of bringing tourism to a place, then we don't have a proper set of indicators at all. Whether businesses and destinations are need different or the same ones, I think ultimately it's both. Each one has its own role to play, but there are shared indicators of success, particularly that place those two key concepts at the middle. One of those, again, being climate. I mean, I can't say it enough. If this challenge isn't solved, it doesn't matter. All the other indicators are ridiculous because we're continuing to make the planet worse, and there will be no future for the sector. I don't mean to sound negative; it's just the reality. And on the other hand, this piece around communities and whether they're benefiting. The government cannot do that on its own. Companies also cannot do that on its own. But ultimately, public sector will have to set the framework, that for other agencies, for companies to contribute to. So I do think there are some shared metrics that will make a really big difference in terms of how investment, because all of this is about how do we drive investment from a policy perspective, where are resources being allocated. How do we shift some of the energy and the money from just billboards and promoting, spending kind of silly amounts of money on promoting tourism to solving some of the issues. And without those shared indicators of success, we won't see that shift in investment.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Next question from Sylvain as well to Damien. Do you think that marketing has to change to a more educational, sustainable way to make tourists be more conscious about it instead of being focused in price, for example?
Very, very briefly, I think marketing could be a very powerful, sustainable tool if it's focused in the right way. I mean, in two ways. In the way that we could reinforce all these local projects, all the resilience projects. Now was telling good examples of these natural areas, how they deal with the educational programs in the local area to promote this communication to the potential clients and to make them conscious about this work. I think it's a very powerful one. But in the other side, in a demand point of view, marketing, doing more honest marketing, doing a more honest marketing could be a very good tool to work with the demand, guaranteeing a great experience of tourism in the destination. We have to focus in both ways. help them to empower the education in a sustainable way that the local activities are doing to guarantee that this activity is sustainable. And in the other hand, trying to guarantee that the tourists could have the best experience that they deserve. Definitely yes. It's not from today to tomorrow.
No.
This is also clear too.
No.
Yeah. I have one comment, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
I agree. Actually, that I think this saying that tourism is moving from marketing to management is not helpful. In fact, I think everything is marketing, and I think it's scared quite a few people. And most of the industry is made up of people with significant skill in marketing. And in fact, you look at the last 10 years before COVID, and people using their brilliant imagination and skill in marketing to achieve quite a lot. And imagine if you could apply some of these same skills to a different set of outcomes. And I think that's when you get people thinking in a really creative way about how they're part of the solution. But if we're starting to separate things and say, well, marketing is here, management is here, this is where you get people just having paralysis because they don't have the training or and all of a sudden we're asking people who have been making brochures to solve the climate crisis. And I think actually if you start to apply the same principles of marketing to managing visitors, to communicating with target markets in a different way, to helping people understand how they can be a part of the solution, then all of a sudden we may have really creative ways to use these very same resources towards different outcomes. That's why I say that at the end of the day, the measures of success matter the most. If we don't frame it differently, then we won't see the actions leading to a different outcome.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think that would be it from our side. Many lessons learned and many things to do still, I think, and we'll see where everything will lead us. But well, thanks to all the speakers for sharing your knowledge and your experiences, and thank you very much to the audience for the attention. We'll jump, I think, into a very inspirational speech that will help us order all these ideas in our heads.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot. Bye.